Good evening to all of you. The world that we live, we can say it's obsessed with continuous activity around us. Right? Lot of activities, lot of people trying to show what are they achieving. That also creates stress. So ultimately, in this world when we live, though we are entitled to do many things, and we are doing that, but ultimately what happens is we all are carrying an invisible weight. You all agree with me, correct? Because we carry an invisible weight. That's where we all say sometimes burnout happens. I don't know, too much of things are bothering me and less energy, thinking about what would happen, kind of thing. That's where we all carry this burden of invisible weight, and it is not the real activity which is creating this issue. See, the thoughts like what people will think of me, am I doing these things, am I the sole reason for doing these things, or how will someone recognize my unspoken responsibility. So for example, at the work we are trying to do something, what will count for my success? Sometimes people will think, why should I bother? Or what is that dimension where somebody will realize good about me? Or if I take up something which is not documented, which is unspoken, will somebody realize that these are the kind of invisible baggage or weight that we carry while we do the work? That's where Bhagavan stresses about the relevance of egolessness. When I say egolessness, the term, the word nirahankara in the way of Bhagavad Gita. So that term nirahankaram or egolessness is very important. If you look at this baggage which I was mentioning, invisible weight, the main issue is the play of ego here. So when I say egolessness, you may ask, what is this? Is that something which one has to drop the personality, or one has to become passive in life? No. Nirahankaram is all about freedom from the false notions. What are those false notions? I am the doer, I am the owner, everything revolves around me. These are the kind of thoughts. In chapter 13, Bhakti Yogam, Bhagavan says, Adveshta sarvabhudanam maitra karuna evacha nirmamo nirahankara nirmamo nirahankara samadukha sukha kshami. Free from what? Two things. Nirmamata and nirahankara, meaning one has to be free from the mamata, that mindness, the possessiveness, and ahankara. See, if you see society, in this world we live, there is lot amount of external pressure, and if you look around, especially in the social media is very much notorious for showing curated realities. You all agree with me, correct? Where we will only be able to see people achieving, succeeding in life, showing their best, being the best. So that's where this kind of external comparison and pressure will sometime create a kind of a constant internal doubt in us. It's a kind of an internal monologue of self doubt. That is where we sometimes think, am I doing enough? Will I be able to achieve? Or what if I don't succeed in life? So these are the baggages, because there is no reason. Work is not a pressure, or the activities that we do, the coordinates that we operate in life, they are not the problem. The kind of thoughts where the ego plays. So these kind of thoughts will shake up our minds. That will drain the energy, and ultimately it will grab our peace. So that is why it's called as invisible weight or a hidden burden. Modern psychology terms this invisible weight or a hidden burden as mental load. I think it's not a new term also. The psychology has coined this out long back. The mental load. So that's where Vedanta addresses this, or Vedanta defines this mental load using the terms such as attachment, expectation, ego, and possessiveness. What are those? Attachment, possessiveness, expectation, and ego. So that's what Bhagavan consistently says, it is not the action. Is the action creating this mental load? It is not the action. It is not the action that is tiring us. It is the invisible weight. It is this psychological baggage that we carry while as well as after we act in life. See, for example, let me bring the case of a mother who is carrying and taking care of a small child. She probably would be working 18 hours tirelessly. Is there any burnout? Still, she will feel joyful, because there is no comparison, there is no contrasting and comparison happening there, because it is the true love. There is true involvement. There is no question of what gain I will get, what benefit I will get. Only focus is taking care of the baby. Whether it is 20 hours with sleep, without sleep, still the mother feels joyful. Whereas a professional who sits inside an office which is fully conducive because air conditioner is there, good environment, good food. Whereas this professional feels completely drained out. So why this draining out? Why the exhaustion is happening? Is it due to the action, or is it due to the ego's involvement in action? That's where Bhagavan mentions this verse we have seen in the last session. Karmano hyapi bodhavyam bodhavyam cha vigarmana agarmanascha bodhavyam gahana karmano gati. See the akarma. So the one who sees inaction in action, the one who sees action in inaction is a wise, is a yogi, and who is the perfect doer of action. So the one who is able to understand when the ego pops up. When I say action in inaction, here action meaning it's the play of ego. So the one who understands the ego's pop up is a wise, is a yogi. Not stopping there, in the next verse, karmanya agarmaya pashyed agarmani cha karmaya sa buddhiman manusheshu sa yukta kritsna karma krit. The one who sees actionlessness in action and full action in actionlessness is intelligent among the man. So that person is called as Yukta. So the mental baggage, the mental load is all about the ego's play. That's where Bhagavan says here consistently act without selfish attachment. And see inaction in action and action in inaction. Whenever we feel that I am getting drained out, what is that? What is that? Or what is the dimension that ego is playing? And the third aspect Bhagavan says is all about let the self knowledge burn out the sense of doership, because when we do the karma, always what pops up is the doership, the sense of doership. So, who am I? Who truly am I? Let that self knowledge burn the sense of doership. So, here, when we say act without selfish attachment, see action in action, action in inaction, and inaction in action, and let the self knowledge burn the sense of doership. Bhagavan says about a true detachment. And true detachment is equal to knowledge of the self. When one knows who truly am I, there the true detachment will happen. Asankhohi ayam purusha. That true self is asankhan. Jnanatni dagda karmanam tamahu pandidam buddha. Jnanatni dagdam karmanam. So the pandit, the one who is truly aware of who truly am I, gives up the deep attachment to the results of the action. And not only that, tyaktva karma balasangam nitya trupto nirashraya. Always be contented and don't dependent or not depending upon nirashraya, nitya trupto nirashraya karmanni abhi pravritta abhi na eva kinjit karoti sa. So, the knower of the true self is ever content, because such a person know that true self is the embodiment of the happiness, and the mind rests in that self. That's where Bhagavan says Nitya Trupta Nirashraya. There is no need of asrayam outside. There is no need of getting trupti from the external things, because the knower of the self is ever content, and the knowledge that true self is the embodiment of happiness, and my mind rests in that self, but I am not aware of that. So that is where we started our discussion today with the baggage. Baggage is all about ego. So, how one can have egolessness? That is the supreme quality one should have in life. So that the question will come, what would be the attributes, like Arjuna asked? What are the attributes of a person who is equanimous? What will that person do? How that person will act? A person who is having the quality of egolessness still acts in this life, still thinks, still plans the life, still achieves things in life, but without identifying the self with the body, mind, intellect, sense, or the status or the position that that person owns. In the third chapter, Bhagavan says that tattvavit, tattvavittu mahabaho guna karma vibhagayo guna guneshu vartante iti matva na sajjate. So here the tattvavit, the one who knows the tattva, the one who knows the self, understands that all actions are performed by the gunas of the prakriti, because the prakriti, the gunas of the prakriti enable one to act in life. But if our mind is deluded by the prakriti, by the ego, and then thinks that I am the doer, then gone. There the ego will start claiming the ownership of the actions that are actually happening through the prakriti. When we say prakriti, that are actually occurring through the body, mind, intellect, sense, and the circumstances that we are around. Bhagavan again as a very strong definition of the egolessness. Bhagavan brings in the 18th chapter, 17th verse, Yasya naham krudo bhavo buddhirasya na lipyade. Very, very profound. Very strongest description of egolessness. The one whose mind is not affected or caught up with the doership remain inwardly free, inwardly strong. So the question will come again, how I will be able to practically live when you say don't have ego? It's quite obvious that when we work in life, when we work in this world, we are acting, we are the actor, we possess different roles. Being a manager, being an engineer, being a doctor, being a surgeon who is heading, or being a lawyer who is trying to get that case win. It's quite obvious that the mind, the ego says that I am the doer, I am the owner, I am the enjoyer. So where the attribute of egolessness says that I am just an instrument, I am just a nimitta. Let the right action flow through me. So that is where the theory of egolessness is very important, because we all carry the invisible baggage in life. It is very much relevant in this modern world, because the play of technology, the pace at which we live are changing. Nobody has the span of attention. Nobody is having time to listen. That is where the theory of egolessness is very important in the modern world. That is where we as individuals should be able to listen, should be able to collaborate, should be able to empower others. There also the mention of leader without a title, leadership without ego. So this is just an attribute that one should have, the egolessness. That will enable one to empower others, able to collaborate with people, able to listen, empathetic listening, active listening. Otherwise, also in the modern world, if we think that I know everything, we are wrong. We cannot have a know it all attitude. Every day we have to learn, we have to empathize. Egolessness will also bring another good benefit of reducing stress and anxiety. See, what we have control is to act, and we don't know how the results will turn up. So give your best effort, but don't tie our self respect with the result. In life, you may contribute honestly, but ultimately the results may not favor us. So don't tie up our self worth with the results that we get out of the karma. Again, the egolessness will improve the relationships. It's quite obvious that in this world, when we live, when we act, when we interact, conflicts will come. Where the conflicts are, or how the conflicts are happening, because people will always try to protect the image of themselves. Correct? What is this conflict meaning? Conflict is all about somebody trying to protect the image of herself or himself. Correct? And the other party will not be able to digest that. That is where the conflicts are coming. Yeah, not only in workplace, if you see in families, in friendships. And if you have the egolessness dimension, we will have a capability to let go of the need to always win. You may feel that it is a compromise, but not compromising. Understand the emotions of the other one who is behaving, who is trying to protect the image of herself or himself. If we try to let go of the need to win in front of that person, but know the person, empathetically know the person. So that is where we will be able to improve the relationships in life. And another important thing in this modern world, in the AI age, everything changes. Every hour, new things are happening. And if he possess the attitude that I know everything, then it is very difficult. So that is where the question of openness to learn things, openness to learn and innovate in life. The openness is very much essential, because the way at which technology, the way at which business changes is quite rapid. So the real obstacle for the growth is not the ignorance. Not knowingness is not a problem, but unwillingness to admit that I don't know. Unwillingness to admit that I am lacking in this. So that is where egolessness, you may feel that we can study everything. No, not like that. Openness is needed. Openness to admit that, yeah, I have to learn. Not only that, forget about maintaining relationship, learning, innovating, etc. We have to have resilience in our life, because success and failure will come in different forms. But our identity cannot be equated with success or failure, because success and failure can be a kind of an event, but I cannot be equated with the success or failure. That is where one should have resilience in life. Neither success or nor failure should define each one of us. So that is where the egolessness will create the psychological resilience in us. So where one should have a clarity, one should have peace inside, and ability to act effectively under all circumstances. So We have to ensure that this invisible weight, the baggage, the burden that we are carrying is very, very, very less. It should be just like a very small backpack, not even that. Don't carry the invisible weight of my image, my success, my recognition, my attachment, my status, my achievement. The state of egolessness, nirahankaram. I'm going back to the 20th verse. Karma bhalasangam nityatrupto nirashraya tiktva karma bhalasangam. So here Bhagavan Krishna practically explains one thing. Freedom in all of us cannot be found just by changing the world around us. Can we get freedom in life? Can we get inner freedom by changing things around? But the biggest hope Bhagavan gives is you can change, or you can have the inner freedom by changing the relationship with the things around versus the I inside. When I say the I, the real I, not the fake I, not the small I, not the bundle of ego, desire, attachment, possessiveness, so called as the invisible baggage. The invisible baggage is the small I, and the real I is the truth that I am not this body, mind, intellect, sense. I am this pure awareness. I am the consciousness. So, what can bring freedom? Not by changing the things which are around us, but by changing our relationship with the I inside us, the real I. The real I is the truth, whereas the small I is the ego. Small I is the invisible baggage. And ego is always clever. Ego can creep into any dimension. Ego can creep into service. When we do a service, ego can creep in. When we do a noble thing, ego can creep in. When we are reading Bhagavad Gita, ego can creep in. Ego can come and say, oh, I know all those verses. Yeah, Bhagavad Gita is very simple. This is a manual of life, and that is where Bhagavan gave this to Arjuna, and I know everything. Karma Yogam, Jnana Yogam, Bhakti Yogam. Ego can play there as well. So, transcending the ego is completely a different ball game. In the end of Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga, Bhagavan says, Naham Vedairna Tapasa Nadanena Danena Nacha Ijjaya Shakya Evam Vido Drishtum Drishtavanasi Mam Yada Bhaktya Tu Ananyaya Shakya Aham Evam Vidorjuna Jnatum Drishtum Cha Tattvena Praveshtum Cha Parantapa. So, bhakti and become a tattvavit. So, ego can come. It is not easy to, transcend the ego, because the transcending the ego, transcending this baggage, transcending this hidden baggage, transcending the mental weight, it's completely a different ball game. That's where Bhagavan now says, verse number 23, Gada Sangasya Muktasya Jnanavastida Chedasa Yajna Yajarada Karma Samagram praviliyate Gata Sangasya Muktasya Jnana Chedasa Yajnaya Acharata Karma Samagram Praviliyate. Very, very important words. Here Bhagavan says Muktasya, who is liberated, Gata Sangasya, who is free from attachments, Jnana Avastita Chedasa, whose mind is rooted in the self knowledge, Yajnaya Acharata Karma, for the sake of doing the Yajna, that person performs actions where those actions will totally resolve in the higher truth. A liberated one from who all the attachment is gone, whose mind is established in the self and performs karma as yajna. For such a person, all his or her work gets entirely dissolved in the higher truth, in the Brahman. Samagram pravaliyate. So, whose work will entirely get dissolved in the higher truth? The one whose attachment is gone, one whose mind is established in the self, and the one who performs karma as yajna. For such a person, the work gets entirely dissolved in the higher truth. Samagram praviliyate. The entire karma gets absorbed. When I say dissolved or absorbed, forever. Where it gets absorbed? It gets absorbed in the infinite. It gets absorbed in the Brahman. It gets absorbed in the higher truth. So the source of action of a realized being is not from the ego. The source of action from a realized one comes from the center, which is purely divine. The source of action for a realized person will come from his or her awareness, one which is purely divine. So, how a transformation can happen? How one can, or how a person who is doing ordinary things in life can become liberated, or doing ordinary actions can become liberating actions, or how can the work to be transformed as worship? That's where Bhagavan says there is an easy way. What is the easy way? The easy way is do work as a yajna. What is yajna? You may think that it is the ritual, it is, you know, it is that ritual which, which we use this fire. It is much beyond that. The expanded view of yajna is basically any action that we perform with an attitude of offering rather than possessing. Yajna meaning what? Yajna is all about the attitude of offering. When we do the yajna, when we do the fire ritual also, you might have noticed that idam na mama, whatever which is getting offered is not mine. It is all about offering rather than possessing. See, there comes the story of two gardeners. Two gardeners served in a society. The first one always complained that nobody notices my work, nobody is appreciating my work. See, I am doing a lot of things, I am talented, but nobody appreciates me, nobody is noticing my work. Whereas the second gardener, who is also doing the same work, simply enjoyed in nurturing the plants. When people admired the flowers of the plants, the gardener just smiled. When nobody noticed or nobody admired, still the gardener smiled at them. And these two people worked in this society, and years got passed. After 20 years, they both had planted many trees. After 20 years, you know, substantial amount of plants they planted and they become tree. The first gardener, for that person, it's all about 20 years of frustration, because nobody is noticing me, I'm not recommend, I'm not respected, I'm not appreciated. The first one carried 20 years of frustration along with the plants he planted. The work is identical for both. So what is different? Is the planting of a plant is different? What is different here? Both are different. Both have done the same job. Work is identical for both. What matters is the inner attitude. Inner attitude was different for both. The first one truly accumulated the karma and the karma vasanas. Raga, Dvesha, Kartrutva, Bhoktrutvam, anybody is observing me, whether I am getting appreciation. Whereas the second one just transformed the work into Yajna. So, what is Yajna? Yajna is really the fire that consumes all our karma, that consumes all our karmic imprints, so called as the Ragam, Dvesham, Kartrutvam, Bhoktrutvam. Yajna is the fire, Yajna is the purification engine also. Yajna burns out our samskarams, so called as the habits, the impulses, and the effects of the past actions. So, Yajnam is a fire, Yajnam is a purification engine, because fire is something which purifies. Yajnam, or the fire that burns out the past samskarams, so called as the habits, the impulses that we carry, the karma vasanas, the effects of the past action. So, what is Yajnam? Yajnam is a beautiful way for us to offer our irritations. Yajnam is a beautiful way to purify. When I say purify, offer our irritations, offer our ego, offer our insecurity into the fire of awareness. So, Yajnam is the simplest way to dedicate our ego into the fire of awareness. Yajnam can happen in different way. Yajnam can happen in the form of a Jnana Yajnam, where we offer our ignorance into the knowledge. We offer our ignorance of I am the body, mind, intellect, sense to the knowledge, to the self knowledge. I am not that. I am not this. I am the true awareness. So, how one can do a Jnana Yajna daily? Dedicate some time to study the scriptures, to attend some satsangams, to reflect and contemplate on this knowledge. Yajnam, the true Jnana Yajnam, through the study, through the reflection, through the contemplation, we will be able to offer the false notions. What are those false notions? I am not the limited body, mind, intellect, senses. I am just offering this limited thinking of I am this body, mind, intellect, sense into the fire of self knowledge. I am beyond this. So, yajnam can happen through different ways in our life. Through jnana yajnam, where one can offer the ignorance into the knowledge by dedicating time, by dedicating time to read, reflect, listen, attend satsangas. In another way, we can also offer our breath and life. When I say breath, breath and life force, regulate the breath, regulate the diet, regulate our lifestyle. See the five body, I mean the panchakosham, annamayam, pranamayam, manomayam, vijnanamayam, anandamayam. See how the body and prana can be offered to the next order, to the larger order. When the yajnam is done, idam na mama. Similarly, I am not this body, I am not this prana, but look at the body, look at the prana. By regulating the diet, regulating the breath, regulating the lifestyle, ultimately we are offering this to the next order, to the larger order. Or at a body plane, offer the senses into a discipline. Limit the usage of WhatsApp, limit the usage of smartphone, limit the scrolling. Be mindful in consuming these tech gadgets. Be mindful in consuming food. Be mindful in gossiping. Because these senses should also have some discipline. Or offer our actions and results. That is where the real karma yogam comes. Perform the duties selflessly. That is the biggest way to roast the ego. Not allowing to say or not allowing the ego to declare that yeah, this is a success, this is a failure, I am a failure, I am successful here. So we discussed about Yajna. Yajna as the purifier, Yajna as the fire. The common element is what? Common element is fire. What is that fire? That fire is basically the capability to have contentment within us while we perform actions. Capability to not depend, Nitya Tripta, Nirashraya. Capability to not depend on external validation. Doership, dropping the doership, dropping the attachment of the fruit. Kevalam shariram kevalam karma kurvan apnodi kilbisham. Nirashir yadachittatma tekta sarva parigraha. So contentment from action, non-dependence on external validations. Dropping doership. Gadasangasya muktasya jnana avastita chetasa. Who is free from the attachment, who is a liberated person, is free from the attachment, and his or her mind is rooted in the self-knowledge. Jnana avastita chetasa. Yajna yacharata karma samagram praviliyade. For the sake of daily yajna, such a person performs actions, and those actions will totally resolve in the higher truth, in the Brahman. This is the Yajnam. Continuing, very, very famous verse. Brahmar pranam brahma have. Brahmatno brahmanahudam. Brahmaiva tena gandavyam Brahma karma samadhina. We all used to chant this before taking food. And if you go to most of the ashrams, at least if the Purushottama Yogam is not chanted, at least this verse. Brahmarpanam, Brahmavir, Brahmagno, Brahmanahudam, Brahmevadena Gandavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhina. What is this? Brahman is the oblation. The higher truth is the one that is offered. The one that is offering Brahmarpanam. Brahman is the oblation, what it is offered. Brahman is the Agni, Brahma Agno. Brahman is the fire. Brahmanahudam. Brahman is the one who offers. One whose actions happen while absorbed in Brahman. Such a person only attains Brahman. Meaning is the contributor, the contribution, the consumption, the performer, the result, everything becomes one in the absolute. Seeing the eternal essence in everything and everywhere. So while we eat, we are saying that the contributor, the contribution, the consumption, the one who is performing, and the result of that, everything becomes one in this absolute. Brahman is the cause of everything, the ultimate oneness behind all multiplicity. This is the Yajna Bhavam. Seeing this with this awareness, with this knowledge, the giver, the gift, the receiver, the action, and the results are all manifestations of the same reality. Let's take the example of the ocean and waves. See, a lot of waves are there in the ocean. Let's assume that one wave is saying, I am offering water to the ocean. Is that logically correct? Yeah, maybe, because that water is also part of the ocean, but I am offering the water to the ocean. But isn't it funny also? So, from where this wave was emanated? It's from that bigger body, so called as the ocean. So, the wave is the water here. The one wave which says that I am offering water to the ocean. That wave is the water. And the ocean that you see, where the wave is emanating, is also water. And the wave which says that I am offering water, that giver is also water. And if that wave is giving to the receiver, that receiver is also water. So, what is then different here? Only the names and forms are different, but the essence is same. Similarly, the universe appears in many forms, but the underlying reality is only one, that is existence, consciousness, bliss principle. In our homes also, we can see we do have a lot of gadgets. What is really needed? We need electricity. Electricity for fan to run, refrigerator to operate, TV to work, mobile charger to charge your phone, or a washing machine to do the cloth cleaning. Their functions are different, but what is common? Their identities are, they do have identities, but what is really needed for those identities to operate? Same, electricity. Similarly, we all, whoever listening, We keep the identities like I am a male, I am a female, I am a teacher, I am a student, I am an engineer, I am a doctor, I am a parent, I am a child. Though appears different, but the same consciousness is shining through all of us. So, same consciousness is there, and see everything involved in the Yajna as the Brahman. That's where Brahma Arpanam, Brahma Have, Brahmatno, Brahmanahudam, Brahmaivate Nagandavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhi. See everything involved in the Yajna as Brahman, the universal consciousness. Seeing this consciousness everywhere is the true knowledge. Seeing this consciousness within is the first step. And seeing the same consciousness everywhere is the knowledge. The knowledge is all about the self, and I am that self, and that same self is pervading everywhere. Isha Vasyamidam Sarvam, as per Isha Vasya Upanishad. Verse number 25. Devam eva apare yajnam yogina paryupasate brahmagnavapare yajnam yajnainevopajuhvati. Devam eva apare yajnam yoginaha paryupasate brahma aknau apare yajnam yajnena eva upa juhvati. So here, yogis, karma yogis, let us take in this context. The karma yogis performs those rituals invoking the deities, whereas others, when we say others, we will say it's Jnana yogis, offer themselves by themselves unto the fire of knowledge of Brahman. See, there are two kinds of seekers mentioned here. The seekers at the beginner level or beginning level versus the seeker who is having a maturity. Or in another way, we can say the Veda Purvam and Vedanta, or the Saguna Upasana versus the Nirguna Upasana. People who are at the early stage, they will do the yajnam, they do the deva yajnam. What is meaning? To fulfill the desires, they invoke deities, but still the mind gets purified. There is nothing wrong. Whereas the Jnana yajnam, the people who are much elevated, will do the Jnana yajnam for the Jnana prapti. We all must be remembering this. In the beginning of the 3rd chapter, Bhagavan says, Logesmin dividadishta pura prapta mayanaha. Right? Jnana yogena sankhyanam, karma yogena yogina. So there are two committed lifestyles. Karma yogis will do the karmam, they convert karmam as a karma yogam for purifying the mind and evolve in the spiritual journey. Whereas what others will do, Jnana yogena sankhyanam. So the sankhya will go through the lifestyle of Jnana yajnam to achieve the Jnana prapti. And Deva Yajnam or the Karma Yogam or the Veda Purvam is mainly for Jnana Yogyada Prapti. What is finally needed is Jnana Prapti. Verse number 26. Srotradinindriyanyanye samyamagnishu juhvati shabdadin Vishayananya Indriyagnishu Juhvadi. श्रोत्र आदीनि इन्द्रियाणि अन्ये संयम अग्निषु जुह्वति शब्दादीन् विषयान् अन्य इंद्रिय agnishu juhvati. So some yogis, what they do, they offer the senses into the fire of self knowledge, whereas others offer the sense objects into the fire of senses. So here, from a yoga point of view, it's Atma Samyama Yogam, restraining the senses. So what these yogis do, one does the, what is that, the control of senses. I mean, they offer the senses into the fire of self knowledge, whereas others offer the sense objects. You must be able to appreciate that, senses versus the sense objects. Ultimately, the offering is done, whether it is senses or the sense objects, the offering is done into the fire of the knowledge. So offering sense objects, meaning what? Mindful engagement. When I say mindful engagement, see, let's assume one is fond of listening to music. So hear music without addiction. So listening music, but if it gets addicted, that has to be controlled. Or let's take another example, enjoying the food, and without becoming obsessed, one should be able to do that. Or let us take another example, using technology. You should use the technology, but you should not become the slave of the technology. So though the senses perform their function, the mind must remain balanced. So one offers the senses, the other offers the sense objects. In whatever way, the senses should perform the function in their way, but the mind should remain balanced. And that is where Yajna becomes a way for matured living. So what is the summary here? One of the greatest yajnas that we all can do is sacrificing the impulsiveness in life, not jumping into what you see and perceiving something which is not right with just the sense objects, with the senses, with whatever you perceive. So the greatest yajna is the sacrifice of impulsiveness, Atma Samyama Yogam. A person who conquer, one who is able to control or conquer his or her senses is truly free. So you use yajna to conquer the senses. So understand Brahman is the reality behind everything. And people who are in the beginning stage, they can start with the Saguna Upasana, invoking deities. Ultimately, what happens is that way will also create purification of the mind. And the others who are into the Jnana Yoga, ultimately both paths should convert Jnana Yogyada Prapti to Jnana Prapti. Towards that, control of senses and the sense objects are very important. Atma Samyama Yogam is very important. So one should be able to sacrifice the impulsiveness And one who can conquer the senses will be truly free. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.